Alright, hey guys, this is Zach here for MTGEdmonton. I'm going to record a vintage daily today, as I've got some time on my hands and figured might as well. And I don't have any PPTQs or anything to prepare for, so I might as well play one of the more fun formats. So, the deck you see before me is not a normal vintage deck. This is a deck I've been playing for the last probably few months. Or at least I've been poking and prodding and trying to make it work. So, what you'll see is clearly the standout card here is 3 copies of Gonti, Lord of Luxury. And so this deck kind of originally started as a meme when Brett Steele played Gonti in Limited and Constructed in the same weekend and crushed both times. And I was like, man, what if I Gonti'd a piece of power? That sounds hype. Or like, because there are so few cards in Vintage that actually have relevant effects on the game, because there's like a lot of big mana and a lot of like cantrips, whereas the actual individual cards that are doing a lot of the legwork, there aren't nearly as many copies of. And so I'm like, well, I can, if you get one of your opponent's like the power differential between the best cards in your opponent's deck and everything else is actually pretty high. So if you get one of those, it's pretty good. And I also thought that, well, hey, maybe the 2/3 Death Touch bodies, it's certainly not awful. It blocks pretty effectively against the new creature-based versions of workshops. And it can also, it's a threat that's reasonably effective against Jace the Mind Sculptor, because bouncing it's not terribly effective. So anyway, so the deck that I've been playing, this is the current version of it. So we play slightly more mana rocks than normal. So we play the full set of power. We play a Mana Crypt, a Sol Ring, and a Mana Vault. We don't play Grim Monolith, but we play basically everything that's worse than Grim Monolith, or better than Grim Monolith, sorry. And then to accelerate out, we have a reasonably high concentration of 4 and 5 drops that we want to power out. And then we also play Dark Ritual, because Gonti is a little heavier on the black side, and a lot of the decks that are ramping don't need as much colored mana. When I say that, I'm thinking of basically Paradoxical Storm, where you're ramping off your mana rocks a lot of the time, and you mostly just need colorless mana. But we need black mana, so we have to go back to the old Dark Ritual card. Dark Ritual largely fell off the radar for a couple of reasons. One is because Mental Misstep is just very, very good against Dark Ritual. So when that card is printed, Dark Ritual saw a downtick. And then Storm actually started picking up with the printing of Dark Petition. But then when Paradoxical Storm was printed in Kaladesh, the other 4-mana card from Kaladesh that's great in Vintage, that Storm variant simply just became more popular. It's slightly more powerful. I'm not sure if it's more or less consistent. I assume it's more consistent in general. I've tried and haven't been super impressed with it, but I mean, it's obviously very good. Anyway, so Dark Ritual's back. We play the full set of blue draw spells. We play Preordained Ponder, Brainstorm, Recall, Time Walk, and then we play the 2 restricted Delve cards, and a couple copies of Gush. Normally you don't see Gush and Dark Ritual in the same deck. We just really wanted, we have a fair bit of colors mana which we can use for Gush, and we also just want to be able to keep our hand full. And because Dark Ritual's card disadvantage, it's important that we have a reasonable amount of card advantage in our deck. So that's why we got 2 copies of Gush. You have the 4 Force of Wills, which is pretty standard, and we have, and sorry, when I say standard, I'm not talking about the Gonti decks, right? I'm talking about the blue control decks that are in Vintage, which play Mentor or whatever. We just were playing slightly different colors and slightly different kill conditions. So we have a couple Jaces, which are also a win condition, and then we have the full 4 missteps, which is a little bit much, but it's really important in that if you're trying to Dark Ritual people, being able to misstep their missteps is very important. So that's why we play the full 4. For the black side of things, we're playing the rituals. We play both tutors. We play Yawgmoth's Will as basically a value engine. We're not actually tendrilsing people. Play a couple copies of Dark Petition just for some more deck consistency, because we usually do kill with a combo, and then and we can actually use this extra black mana pretty reasonably. And we play a copy of Necro just because we're playing rituals, and it's the hardest part about Necro is obviously just casting it. Like your mana base has to be tailored a certain way to play Necro, but we've got that in this deck, so Necro gets a slot. So as for how we normally kill our opponents, so usually we will kill them with some combination of these 4 cards, which are Tinker for either Blightsteel Colossus or either half of the Vault Key combo. And we'll use our card advantage, and we'll basically just grind our opponents out until we can win with one of these 2 ways, is the game plan. Sometimes you kill them with a combination of Gonti damage plus like Mana Crypt and Fetchland damage, or you sometimes chase them out. But usually the actual way you kill them is you'll use these cards. So that's how we're actually winning the game. For the lands are somewhat interesting. So again, as I touched on earlier, Dark Ritual and Gush normally aren't in the same deck, and that really requires this makes you want islands that tap for black, which are Underground Seas. So we have full 4 Underground Seas because they're the only land that does what you want. We have Academy because we're playing all these mana rocks, which is great. We have 8 fetches just because we need Underground Seas. I currently have a basic Swamp, which is a concession to shops, just so that we can fetch it turn 1 and then or so that we can like Dark Ritual or do anything without exposing ourselves to Wasteland necessarily, and also we're not allowed to play 5 Underground Seas. And then I play a Library. Again, we are a control deck with a combo finish, so Library is great, and we play a Strip Mine. And Strip Mine is mostly a concession to opposing libraries and a small amount to workshops, but mostly it's your out to Library, which you sometimes need to tutor for, because Library is definitely one of the ways you can just win a control mirror. I mean, I've considered a lot. This Swamp maybe should even be just a watery grave, because I just want all these lands that I can gush, that tap for both colors, and I can use for gush. But anyway, so that's the main deck. Sideboard is reasonably straightforward. So we have 3 Leyline of the Voids, which are basically for Dredge and some Storm decks. Thoughtseize, which is for blue decks and combo decks. And then we've got a Notion Thief, which is also just for any blue card draw deck. And then we have a small red package. We have Ingot Chewers. These come in against the shops decks, and occasionally against like Paradoxical Storm. You just want to shatter decks that aren't really taxing your mana. Against that deck, playing the Volcanic Islands is less of a downside because they're not attacking your mana base. Whereas the upside on Ingot Chewers has versus shops, so So it comes in both those matchups. Then we have Sulfur Elementals, which are for the Mentor matchup. I'm not sure if these should be Dread of Knights or not, or something else. I kind of like Sulfur Elemental mostly because it doesn't get misstepped or countered at all. And it lets us buy a lot of time. And it also threatens their Planeswalkers if they play them naked without a Mentor. So I really like that. Yeah, so that's basically the deck. Like I said, it's a blue-black control deck that has a combo finish and everyone's favorite Aetherborn. So let's get right into some games.